the huge takeaway for me, which I used later on in everything in my life, and particularly the cancer, was the important point is action, but also holding space and ease and not grasping onto the outcome, but just letting it sit and trusting. So I had to trust my body. I just had to trust in the visions, trust in what I was believing. But I think when we do things with an urgency and a grasping and a fighting, I think that can undo everything.
Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of CrownYourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
Monique, welcome to Crown Yourself. It's so good to have a fellow Gold Coaster.
Yay!
There's still a part of my soul that is like in the Gold Coast. I just loved it there so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know, I grew up in Melbourne and I moved up to the southeast Queensland for a course. And I remember seeing a palm tree in the side mirror of my car. And I went, yeah, you know what? I think this is the place for me.
Yeah.
It's beautiful up here.
It's beautiful. And so looking at your life, like you have overcome some extraordinary challenges and in very non-traditional ways. So I'd love to know, what is the story that you were telling yourself and that created dis-ease, and how did you find ease in a new narrative?
Thank you. My narrative was that I was other and that I was abandoned. And I had some really good reasons why I had those narratives. And, you know, you yourself and probably many of your listeners know about neural pathways and how the experiences we have, that our expectations, how we view the world, how we respond to the world, and often it's unconscious. And for me, it was totally unconscious. I couldn't understand what was going on, you know, and the effect that it had played out in my choices and how I lived my life. And the funny thing is my response or coping mechanism, which sounds like a good coping mechanism, was resilience. Right? But actually, it was suppression. But I can go into that a little bit later. But yeah, we all cope in different ways, and some of them seem to be shiny and good, but actually is detrimental. That's what I found out through my journey.
Yeah, I think resilience is very praised. I think that's certainly a quality I am grateful that I have created, crafted, honed. But it did take me, when I was actually living in Australia, to admit that I didn't feel resilient. I felt very weak. I felt like I was crumbling to the floor because I was pregnant and I lost my father. And that moment of acknowledging weakness, like that was a hard one for me to...
Absolutely.
For someone who lives in an identity of, and so many people are like, you're so strong. Yeah. And like being in an identity of strength and I can do it and anything. And so what shifted for you?
Well, you know, before I became aware of all the beautiful things that are possibilities for us in this world, I remember my mother married this really terrible person, and he had a daughter, and she was called the princess. And I was the person who had to shut up and kind of be put in the corner, so to speak.
You were Cinderella.
I actually was Cinderella. I got blamed for everything. And so, other things happened prior to this, but I just want to share some little things that I did before I even knew how to change my narrative. I remember she was always treated so well and I was treated so poorly. And that really pissed me off. It was like, it's just not fair. Why is this happening? And I remember meditating one day while I was 23, and it occurred to me that my expectation to be treated the same actually was harming me instead of helping me. So I decided to stop expecting to be treated well by him. And I also stopped telling the story of how terrible he was, because what happened was I would repeat this story of not just him, but my childhood growing up. And people would say to me, oh, you're so resilient, you're so brave, you're so this, you're so that. So it would make me feel really good, but it didn't actually allow me to go down to why I felt abandonment and alone and other. So I just lived in that resilient coping mechanism and suppression. So I suppressed all the terrible things to cope. And I just kept telling myself I'm resilient. And, I was resilient, and that was a good thing. I remember one of the things too I wanted to share was how the narratives we tell us are often based on other people's stories, what happened, what they think happened. Some of them is true, some of them is false. Some of our memories are true, some of our memories are false. I remember when I was 23, again, it was a very important time in my life. I was madly in love with this guy called Peter. And we, cut a long story short, we ended up not being together. And I, for years and years and years, held this abandonment theory around him not committing to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these experiences just further cemented my concept, my narrative of abandonment. Last year, I found some old journals and I read this journal, and actually he loved me, wanted to marry me. He didn't abandon me. There were circumstances that we were living in that caused him to leave. And I thought, oh my God, all of my life I've been saying to myself, what a rat he was. He abandoned me.
Mm-hmm.
My first true love. So, and then other things happened, and this is where I'll go into where my root cause of my abandonment came in, which was my mother met a fellow and who became my father, and he left. And she told me that he was irresponsible, he was a cheater, he was a professional gambler, he was a bad person. Yet, when I was 2.5, he abducted me and took me for 15 months until she found me. And prior to that, I'd been living in an institution where I was in neglect and my brother had died. Now, I don't know the correlation of those two events, but so he abducted me, and then Mum found me and stole me back, and then we were on the run, changed names, many, many homes, 20 or more homes before I was 11, 10 primary schools, an interesting childhood, which lived with other people. When I was 6, I virtually lived alone, and when I was 10, my mother wouldn't get home till 11 o'clock at night. So from the beginning when I woke up till 11, if I woke up, I was living alone in a place that wasn't particularly safe. And even at 6, that was similar, but she'd get home at 8. I had reasons to feel not looked after, unsafe. We are loss averse, and our need in life is to feel safe. And my whole childhood was not safe and neglectful. And then she married this man, which was violent, and it wasn't great. So I had this deep feeling of abandonment, that I was a resilient person. I traveled the world, had a great time, was a performer, performed all around the world, started my own company, award-winning. So it's not like I was someone who was powerless or a victim. I actually got on with life. I got married, had a beautiful son. But I would always come back to this feeling of darkness. You would call it depression. I didn't know that was depression, because I said I don't ever get depressed. I'm a positive person. See?
Positive and resilience. Yes, depression.
Right? Yeah. And then various things happened. Like I got cancer. I got divorced. All my family died except for my son, thank God. I got burnt out, left my business, traveled, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this reoccurring like fog of despair would just come upon me out of the blue. I wasn't even thinking negatively. It would just come. And for days and days, I'd feel this utter despair, utter feeling alone. It was horrid. And I would cry and cry, and I couldn't work out what the hell was going on, because I was a nice person. I was living a outwardly successful life. I remember when my marriage broke up, we had really fallen out of love with each other. So it wasn't that, but the marriage container made me feel safe. So when that fell apart, there I was back in my despair, alone, abandoned. So I took that separation and divorce quite badly.
It seems like there's some really strong running themes. So all of the challenges, and like one is this underlying what I call Trojan horse of safety.
Yeah.
And this desire to create safety or recreate familiarity. So even if it's not technically safe, there are certain instances that recreate familiarity. And the second Trojan horse is commiseration or commiserate validation, where there are certain things that happen in our lives where it may seem good, like, oh, I received validation for being a strong, independent, resilient person. Oh, you're so strong. And it attaches us to this identity because we're getting outward acceptance. It's the same of what happens when, in just the opposite contrast of when, you deflect on a compliment. If someone says, oh, you look really lovely today. And you said, I still need to lose a few pounds. And they say, no, you don't. And when they do that, you receive the validation for the deeper seated fear that is, weight loss is not associated with what it is that that you don't really feel that good in your body anyways. So
yeah,
I'm curious, did this desire for safety, I find it fascinating that you chose the path of entrepreneurship, because a lot of people believe that to be unsafe. I personally think being an entrepreneur is like the safest career you can be in, because when you learn how to sell, you can do anything. So,
well, the funny thing is, story was a huge part of my business. I used story to network, to pitch, to retain my clients, yet I was disconnected to my own story. And, I stayed in that marriage because I would say to myself, well, he doesn't beat me. He's not an alcoholic. He's not this, he's not that. So it's, the scales. And this was a coping mechanism. I would settle for less than what I deserved, because honestly, probably deep down, because of my trauma and being, treated the way I was, I obviously didn't have a great value for myself, that I deserved a loving, cherishing relationship. The great thing was, though, when I had my son, our son, he never really got involved in the parenting, but all the familial patterns that I'd grown up with, I didn't repeat those.
Mm-hmm.
And my son is a very whole, happy person. He does breath work, he's a yoga teacher. I mean, I'm very proud of him. And of course, that's his responsibility, how he's responded to life. But I do think I created, even though the marriage wasn't great, there was a safety and acceptance for him and his life. So I was very happy that I didn't repeat my mother's choices.
Look at you, generational curse breaker.
Yeah. I mean, that actually is a huge thing, to not record the patterns of your life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I noticed I did it in the first year of being a mom. My husband and I are all regularly 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. We are phenomenal. But for the first year that I was a mother, suddenly I had all these stories come out about how I made more money, how I was taking care of my son the most. And my husband, if anyone knows him, he is the most loving, generous, supportive. All you have to do is ask him and he will do it. He'll do what needs to be done for those he loves. And I just didn't. I was running this story from childhood of oh, there he is. He's just doing his thing. And I was like, that was not my voice. That was not my voice. That was what I perceived I picked up from childhood, because I mentioned that to my mother and she's like, I never said that. I never thought that. But it was my perception of what I saw was going on. It was a story that I was creating for myself. And then I was recreating that in our marriage. And when I shifted that story, suddenly I felt so supported and got help. And he was so helpful. And I was like, wow, the stories that we tell ourselves are so deeply powerful.
Absolutely.
And especially when they come from childhood trauma.
Yeah. So with regards to my mother and my father, him abducting me and never seeing him again. And so I had an abiding story, which was really encouraged by my mother, that he was a cad, didn't care for me, blah, blah, blah. I did something called the Hoffman Process. I don't know if you've heard of
No,
that.
I haven't.
Yeah, it's really, it's a psycho sort of therapy, but it's a group, it's group work, a group process. And you do focus on familial patterns and how those patterns affect your life and things like that. So I'd got cancer, and I won't go into that just right now, but I knew that I needed to face this deep trauma that I had that was causing me to, had caused partly my cancer, not my cancer, and different choices I had made in my life, the negative choices. So I did the Hoffman Process. And one of the things you do is you bring a photo of your parents or your carers. So I bought a picture of my mum and I bought a picture of my real dad, my father. And I had seen this photo many times before. I guess I was primed for change during this process. I saw my dad looking at me with total love in his eyes. And I had this metaphysical feeling of absolute love from him. And I felt, contrary to everything I'd been told, that he actually loved me. And something changed in my heart, because that old abandonment narrative, which was very strong with regards to my parents, was cracked open. And that Hoffman Process week changed a lot of things, because, the whole thing of suppression and resilience. I remember getting counseling, and they would say to me, oh, you're so resilient, you're fine, well done you with everything you've been through. And I'd go away thinking, because I'm a good talker, I'm very rational and logical, and I've read a lot, so I could say all the right things. And I thought, I was being honest. But I remember one counselor said to me, or therapist said to me, yeah, but what do you feel? And I said, I'm telling you what I feel. I feel alone and abandoned and sad and depressed. She goes, yes, but how does it feel? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm telling you. And she said, you have a problem accessing your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, oh, I don't understand. I cry and feel shit all the time. I don't know how you can say I'm not accessing my feelings. I didn't say that to her. She was a great therapist, actually. But during the Hoffman process, I won't go into the whole thing, but they encourage you to face your emotions. And there was this one exercise that they asked us to do, and I was paralyzed. I couldn't do it. It was facing my anger, because I became a born-again Christian when I was 15, and that was really fantastic for me at the time because I found community, safety away from this traumatic home. But one of the things that I'd picked up was I'm a good girl, I'm always nice, I never complain, I never get angry, blah, blah, blah. So they were wanting me to face my anger. And I said to my facilitator, I said, I can't do this. Like, I was actually shaking. And she goes, well, that's your choice, love. Or she didn't say love, actually. It's your choice. And I was faced at a crossroads in my life at that point. So I did it, the activity that we were asked to do, and it changed my life, because facing your damage, facing your trauma, facing your deep-seated pain is really quite difficult. And the fact that I chose to do that changed me forever. Mm-hmm. Because, well, it just changed the grip that I had on my life and opened me up to, seeing life differently.
We can be such great actors in our own lives, and also we can also be such shit actors in our own life, just saying the words that we've been programmed to say. Oh, this is the script. This is what we keep saying. Yeah. And yet it's not actually sinking in. I know when I was in acting class, which was like such a healing space for me because it was Meisner acting, and really like the whole premise is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And I remember my teacher calling me out because I was crying, I was angry, I had all of the emotions, I was great at showing it. And he said, "You're not really feeling it." And I was like, "Fuck you, I'm not really feeling it." But then we got to a point where there was a scene that I did that actually was very similar to experiences in my childhood and an abuse that happened. And I knew what it was to actually feel it. And I faced it through the safety of a play rather than in the safety of a character, but at the same time, still having to face those emotions and really be with them was so challenging, because and I'd love for you to delineate, how do we know the difference between when we're repeating a script and a narrative that we've been telling ourselves for a long time that may come with some emotions versus really truly facing the emotions that we're suppressing?
Well, I think, there was something I learned when I studied mime in London. The teacher would say to me, or all of us would say, don't think, just do. And I think moving out of the thinking brain, the overworking, and moving into a heart space. So that's where the heart-mind coherence brings out energy in our lives, and the words we say, the narrative that we have. I do want to go back to the father story, but one of the things I learned through when I went on sabbatical, and I did a whole lot of courses. I studied under Dr. Joe Dispenza and various things. And one of the things I learned, actually even prior to that, was moving from thinking, or becoming aware of my thoughts, becoming aware of the feeling that was, and then changing the thoughts, and then moving into the feeling of the new thoughts, even obviously before any change, just so visualization, changing the language that we say, and so on. And then we move into, and that changes our beliefs. And then from beliefs, without action, nothing changes. So you can do all those things, become aware, do your visualizations, change your feelings around something, and even have new beliefs, but without actually taking any action, I think not as much happens. So it can be little actions, like when I chose not to repeat the same story about my stepfather and his, mistreatment of me or things like that. It can be a little thing. It doesn't have to, you don't feel like you've got to change everything. In fact, it's the little daily things, which when I get to the cancer story, was pivotal in that transformation for me.
What were the daily changes you made around your cancer?
Oh, can I just finish the family story? Because there's a really beautiful bow to this.
Oh, yes, so, please.
After the Hoffman process, because my dad was half Spanish, I wanted to see how Spanish I was. So I did an ancestry.com, and it came back with 2% Spanish. And I thought, what's going on here? And I just thought, was he not my dad? I don't really understand. Anyway, but in the ancestry, I'd opened myself up to other people to contact me, people who had a high genetic match. And this woman contacted me. I was a bit cynical, I have to admit. And she said, I think we might be related. Oh, I know, yeah, okay. And so I said, well, this is my dad's name, blah, blah. Anyway, cut a long story short, I found out that I have 7.5 siblings, 18 uncles and aunts, and that, now listen to this, my dad, the person who abducted me and I never saw again, my dad, George, talked about me all the time to his family, to his kids. That's why she went on ancestry.com to find me. And he hired a private detective to find me, was unsuccessful. And then later on he died. So he was dead by the time I found this out. But that revelation I had from that picture that he really loved me, he really did love me. He wanted, I was in that terrible institution. I think he abducted me because I was not being cared for properly. And then my mum stole me back and changed names, and he never found me. What an incredible blessing that was to me. I wasn't abandoned by him. He loved me. I'm loved, loving, and lovable. That changed so much. Just doing that, looking at that photo and then getting the ancestry.com results. And now I have all this new family. So, it's incredible. We're not super close, but they live all around the country. I haven't met them all yet, but I've met some of them. Isn't that beautiful?
That's amazing to be able to have that reconnection, and that goes beyond what you thought was possible.
And this is why our narratives, we have to be very careful with our narratives, because only 60% of our memories, they say, are correct. The stories that people tell us, it's their agenda, it's their narrative that drives what they tell us. So my mother had her own agenda. Mm-hmm. She wanted to hold on to me, and she didn't want him around. So she told me bad things about him. And the narrative that I created around feeling safe and worthy, I was safe. I was worthy. I went through difficult circumstances which played out in my health, but
how do you think they played out in your health?
Yeah, so 2 things that played out in my health. with epigenetics, do you know about epigenetics?
Mm-hmm.
Epigenetics.
And Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, Dr. Bruce Lipton and a whole bunch of other scientists and things and doctors. Epigenetics means above genes. So our genes, a lot of the story around the genome and so on is that our genes affect our life fully, utterly, completely. But actually our genes are affected by, they have these little receptors on the genes, and what comes in, what our environment, our thoughts, what we eat, our emotions, all of that comes down and has an effect on these little receptors and can affect the genes negatively or can protect the genes. So two things. One, I didn't find out till later that I had a dysfunctional gene, and that was estrogen. I didn't get rid of estrogen. My body held on to estrogen. I remember this doctor telling me, because I was a bit anti-medical system, the doctor telling me, if you don't take this pill, you'll die. And I remember thinking, oh my God, F you, like, don't go saying that to me, because this was my first time I got cancer back in 2013. But I didn't take the tablet because it was so debilitating. I could barely walk. I couldn't walk upstairs. It had the side effects were terrible. And I got cancer again. It metastasized stage 4 terminal cancer in 2019. And I think a part of that was because my body was so chock-a-block of estrogen, because the cancer I got was estrogen progesterone positive. So my little body was just stuffed full of estrogen, and, it just fed that disease. So eventually I took the estrogen blocker, and yay, that's fantastic. So I had to work around the whole thing because I was very pro-holistic and not really wanting medication. But in life, we have to be very flexible and not too rigid, especially when it comes to our health, mental health, physical health. So I knew specifically by that genetic test that my body wasn't functioning properly, so I needed to take that blocker. So that was a big part. But I think the biggest part was I always felt unsafe. I felt abandoned. I was always in a fear state, in a sympathetic state. So I wasn't in parasympathetic state. My nervous system, right, which is calm, safe, okay, can self-regulate and all of that. I was reactionary and I suppressed my emotions. So the body and the mind, it's connected. What goes on up here, there is a connection, and it does manifest. This isn't just a spiritual thing. It's it's a medical thing. It plays out in your body. So epigenetics, my body was falling apart because there was something deeply unhappy and reactionary in my body. So it wasn't until I addressed all of these things that, I've been cancer-free for well over 2 years from a terminal diagnosis. Yeah, so I changed so many things.
What was the first change?
Well, okay, I'll tell you. So prior to getting the diagnosis, I hadn't been feeling particularly well for a few months. And I remember I used to walk around my apartment. I was depressed because I had stopped my business, which was a huge part of my identity. I was unemployed and I had no money. So from running a big business, I had lots of money, to my son was living overseas. I just felt alone. I was broke and I didn't feel great. I'd walk around my apartment at night, tidying up, just in case I died in the night. I wasn't suicidal. I think I was completely empty and hopeless. I don't know. I just was empty, I suppose. And so when I got this diagnosis, I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. And there was a I had been reading about quantum physics and epigenetics and all of these sorts of things prior to getting this diagnosis. And I remember hearing about something called Schrodinger's cat. You heard of that?
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. So basically, it's sort of a metaphor for quantum physics. So it talks about the observer effect. So you've got a box and there's a cat inside the box and there's a bowl of poison. The observer, the person outside the box, makes a decision prior to opening the lid whether the cat's alive or the cat's dead. So in quantum physics, the observer effect, it's an energetic thing, and how you observe things has an outcome in the energetic quantum world. So that night, I said to myself, you know what? My cat's alive. My cat's alive. I just kept repeating, my cat's alive, my cat's alive, my cat's alive. I knew that I had a choice to live or to succumb. And it wasn't a matter of resilience. It was a matter of, I just want to live. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I want to live. And I've always had a spiritual life. It's changed its iteration on a number of occasions, but it's very much an energetic sort of spiritual life now, as opposed to a more traditional religious sort of experience. But I remember saying to God, I said, God, can you give me some signs? I need some signs that I'm going to get through this. Thank you. And that night I saw a vision of a big green circle. This was in my bedroom. And I woke up in the morning, and green is a sign of health and calm and new growth and things like that. So I went, okay. So we can be cynical about these things, just a dream, it's just projection, it's just whatever. But I chose to believe that was a sign. Mm-hmm. So that further grounded me in a belief system that I held very dear, that I was. And then the next night I had another, I heard a voice and it said healed. And I woke up in the morning and I went, healed. I'm healed. That's it. I'm healed. And so I held on to those things as truths. I didn't doubt it. I held on to it and believed it. And I think that's one of the things we need to do when we're in difficult situations is find something that you can hold on to. I remember I had panic attacks when I was working at a hospice in London, and I used to repeat this verse, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be dismayed, for I, the Lord, am with you. And I used to repeat this when I was in the middle of a panic attack. I was 21 dealing with dying people. It was way beyond my comfort zone. I was able to get out of those panic attacks within a reasonably short time. So I think however it is for each person, find something that you can ground yourself in. I went on to do lots of grounding work, not just believing in those two things. I every day I went from being quite an adrenaline person, I was in the creative industries, I was an actor, I was running huge, big productions. Life was pretty exciting and I liked it. And I went to a calm state every day. I would meditate, visualize, do different treatments, and so do self-hypnosis every day and be telling myself things like, I am healthy, I am loved, I love myself. Or just, that I knew that what the mind says, the body feels. So I would speak to my body every day in this alpha state, love my body. I would go through all the organs, the bones, my brain, and I would talk to my cells, send it love. I didn't fight cancer. I wasn't angry at cancer. I knew that cancer is just a cell that's deformed. It doesn't want to kill me. It just wants to grow because it thinks that's what it's got to do, like all the good cells. I would talk to my immune system, tell it how much I love my immune system. I talk to my T cells, my B cells, my natural killer cells, tell them I love them. And it was just, honestly, it was so good to be in a place of love, self-love. And, the Hoffman process and all that work I had done. But even this was all prior to all of that, prior to finding out about my dad. I had no money for treatments. I was doing the visualizations. That was it. That's all I was doing. Because I had no money. I was broke. I prayed for money and I got money eventually. And I started doing treatments like hypothermia and IVs and things like that. But for 5 months, 6 months, I had no support at all, just being on the mat every morning and loving my body. It's amazing, actually. It's miraculous, actually, what that does for us. So instead of fighting, I was just relaxed and calm. And, when you get something that is life-threatening, it's a paradox. On the one hand, you believe, I am well, I am healed, I'm going to live, I am living, I will live on. And the other hand, you have to go, I understand that I could die, I'm okay to die. Holding those two opposing things, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But I found by being, Joe Dispenza, he's great. He talks about having an awareness, having a thought of what you want and believing it, feeling it. And that's one of the things I did when I was on the floor. I felt well. I would do that quantum entanglement. I would see myself 2 years ahead, looking healthy, great hair, good body, completely healthy. And I would entangle myself to that person. Mm-hmm. And I was one with that healthy person. And I felt it. I felt the joy that I was well and cancer-free, So feeling is very important.
I think there's an interesting thread that you've had a few times Dr. Bruce Lipton calls it the biology of belief, and you've mentioned cynicism. And what, if any, is the benefit of being cynical? I've yet to find a benefit. So I'm curious if having had cynicism or been a cynic at some point, how the transformation has ensued from allowing from any cynicism or any doubt to just let the cynicism go.
Yeah, so that's a really, really great question. I err on the side of intellectual things. I like to learn. I like science, and I shy away from woo-woo people who, or things that are just sort of too emotionally based, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I like balance. I like to balance. So I get a bit cynical at belief systems that, so like with, The Secret. Mm-hmm. Right, saying, I'm going to manifest a new house, or I'm going to manifest this, or I'm going to manifest that. And I believe in visualization and manifesting, but if you just stay in your lounge room and don't do any work, if you're looking for a partner, don't go out and to meet people, where nothing's going to happen, So that's the kind of thing I'm cynical at. I'm cynical at things that, I wouldn't
say that's, I completely understand with The Secret. I remember receiving it from a friend of mine who was like, this will change your life. And I watched it, and I am like close to becoming the queen of quantum leaps. Like quantum leap, Australia, quantum leap, manifested a house in 3 months, like quantum leap. Oh, I decided to get pregnant, and suddenly I thought it was going to be really hard, and suddenly there was a baby. ability to quantum leap comes from those actions. And the manifest, you can manifest really quickly, but I do think the secret did leave out the most key part of manifestation, which is going from the spiritual into the mental, into the emotional, but then you got to get into action. So if you're not looking up houses on Zillow or elsewhere, if you're not, on a dating app or going out there, if you're not looking at your bank balance and like, oh, because somebody who manifests lots of money probably has an awareness of where their bank balance is. If you're not taking these active steps, then, and it depends on the person, but what are those action steps that actually create transformation? And yes, visualization can create that. And like what you did with the experience of the cancer, the action was getting onto the mat every day. The action was speaking to it. The action was speaking love into it. The action, so it wasn't just feeling, the action was speaking. Action, think of any action as like, it's a verb. So you have to look at what is the verb that you are putting to the manifestation of what it is that you're creating.
I think I remember when I'd been to Joe Dispenza, a 2-day thing in London. And then within a week, I was faced with a situation where my UPS box had gone to this warehouse because the guy picking it up had forgotten to put the label on the top. So this box held all my little treasures from my 2 years overseas. And I rang them up. I said, what can you do? And they said, well, I'm sorry. Your box is with thousands of other unmarked boxes. I'm sorry, there's nothing that's going to happen here. And I'd just done Joe Dispenza and I thought, okay, well, here's a good opportunity for me to put something into practice. So I did all the processes, but I also let go. And I think this is a very important thing. So I let go to my emotional attachment to what was in that box. I believed in the outcome, but I also let go of how that would come about. I saw a woman, I don't know why a woman, going into that warehouse and looking for my box because I had a blank piece of paper on the top. Anyway, 2 days later, I got an email with my box and they said, is it in with my things flowing out of it? And they said, is this your box? And I said, yes. And the huge takeaway for me, which I used later on in everything in my life, and particularly the cancer, was the important point is action, but also holding space and ease and not grasping onto the outcome, but just letting it sit and trusting. So I had to trust my body. I just had to trust in the visions, trust in what I was believing. But I think when we do things with an urgency and a grasping and a fighting, I think that can undo everything.
I completely agree. I completely agree because, the Buddha says the root of all suffering is detachment. And it is attachment, not detachment. And I remember when I was 1 year out of having my baby, not even 1 year, like a few months, I was in a coaching program. And we were all standing up and getting really emotional and declaring our wins. And I was like, I'm going to have $1 million business in this year, in the next 12 months. And I was revving myself up. But I was suppressing and avoiding so many deep-seated emotions that came with becoming a new mother, that came with my son just having a couple challenges when he was first born, that came with all of my stuff came up in this role of mom. I was not personally developed enough to receive that. And I held onto this attachment. And because I held onto the attachment, I then made it that I'm a bad business owner. I suck. I don't achieve my goals. And I had all of these beliefs and reasons that built up in my mind because I was so deeply attached to this emotional, I'm going to do this sort of thing. what I am loving from your story is the beautiful experience that comes from that detachment, because we did have that when we manifested our house. Because we had 3 months, we were all ready to go, and we just needed to sign like a little extension. And I was like, they're going to sign. And then their broker came back with this like ridiculous ultimatum. And I was like, no, we're not putting that much money on the line, non-refundable. And I said, I am completely willing to walk away from this house. I will not sign that agreement with the sort of Damocles on a deadline, like not going to do that. And I held that boundary, and I said, we had tickets to go to Texas. We were all set to, we had pod shipped, like everything was done.
Yeah.
And I said, but we're not going to sign. I said, and my mom, she was like, well, what do we do? Like when we get to like, and I said, what we'll do is we'll hit the ground. We'll stay in the Airbnb that we already have anyways. And then we'll go search for another house and give them an all cash offer. But it was, and then within an hour, we got the contract back, and it was completely signed in exactly the way we had agreed on, without it being, without these other ultimatum pieces. But it was because I was like, I will not, like, here is my boundary universe, not allowing myself to be pushed.
Yeah.
And I think that's such the piece that comes with the paradox of accepting that we do live in a paradox, like what you said, Monique, about I am healed, I am well, I am loved, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if that's not what it is. It's okay if that doesn't take off.
No.
Because I've seen way too many really successful, high-achieving people who miss their goal by a little bit, and thus it crushes them.
Yeah.
Because they're so attached to the goal. So how do we practice this? How do we practice this art of detachment? What does it feel like in our bodies? What does it feel like in your body? And then maybe that can give us some context of how detachment actually feels.
Well, I've got a really lovely little story to tell you about this. So in 2016, I put an out-of-office message in my business, and I sold my home and bought a ticket overseas. Had no idea what I was going to do. I labeled it my year of curiosity. It was a sabbatical. The only thing I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to walk the Camino. I'd read a book about it. I thought, yeah, I think that would be great for me. I knew nothing about mindfulness. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff that we're talking about today. And I remember I was a bit nervous because I wasn't that fit. I wasn't a hiker. But anyway, I remember deciding not to think about the past because I was very stuck. I was depressed, marriage broke up, family had died, blah, blah, blah. I decided to not think about the past at all. No rumination, not one thought about the past. And, you know, the unknown is very tricky for all of us. It's a big trigger. We feel very uncomfortable with unknowns. And I think that's one of the reasons we can at times make not great choices or get stuck because of the unknown loom. So I decided I had a huge unknown, so I didn't know what I was going to do. So I decided not to think about the future at all. I remember every day walking and hearing my feet crunching on the rocks and the ground beneath me, walking in beautiful forests, and I tended to walk alone, and I didn't think about anything. I just enjoyed the space. Now, that's not something that everyone can do, but I think we can find space wherever we are. So I went into a place which I went to when I had cancer, of calm and not overthinking, because that's my natural tendency, right? To want to know what's going on, to want to make the best choices. I mean, I was a business owner, so you're always making decisions and and I was an entrepreneur and I was creating things from nothing. So I had to put all of that aside and just be in awareness of my steps, my environment, and just be in that place. And we don't all have the opportunity to go walk the Camino. I'm actually taking a mindfulness Camino group next year
Yeah.
Very exciting. But we don't all have the opportunity or desire to do something like that. But I think we can do it every day in our lives, is just to cut off. And, basically that's what meditation is. It's just taking a break from our brain and just becoming quiet. And from that grounded state, because I think it's so easy to be in a negative state with everything that's going on in the world, all the wars and the COVID, all that drama, horribleness, people dying, or whatever. There's just, there's all the conspiracy theories that are roaming around. People are quite afraid of the government. They're afraid of so many things, very much on the defensive, and they don't feel safe. It's very hard to make life-enhancing, really good choices when you're in a state of fear and feel unsafe. It's that whole fight, freeze, fawn.
Mm-hmm.
So fight, you become really aggressive and you're trying to change things. Freeze is you just get stuck and you can't do a thing. Fawn is where you just people please and just put all your energy into looking after other people and neglect your own health. Fight, flee, freeze, fawn. Is that it? I think that's it, isn't it? So I think becoming aware of if we are in any of those states, becoming aware, I think self-awareness is such a huge thing to be. It's actually life-changing, because so often we work in our unconscious state, which is very normal, right? Our unconscious state, all the patterns that we've been living all our life, we don't even aware how much they drive us.
And it's studied about 90 to 95% is what we do is subconscious. The thoughts we think, those have some deep neural pathways. And
absolutely.
I just had Chelsea Dinger on my podcast, and she talks about her recovery from postpartum. And she said it was 9 years of retraining neural pathways, 9 years of recreating new grooves. And while I believe that there is also a paradox in that things like self-hypnosis, timeline therapy can take things away like this. And there's also the habits of the daily habits to remove yourself from what you're so used to, coming into the space and changing that. And those things also take time. So things can happen in an instant, quantum entanglement, and things can happen over time in Newtonian time.
Yeah. The thing is, though, we can have a really powerful, insightful experience, but until we actually play that out in everyday life, all the old stuff can come back. And I think one of the keys to that is being aware of things like our self-talk. Oh, I'm stupid. So I have this thing, I've got a bit of a knee issue. It was an old injury, sporting injury. And I've been saying, because I walk on soft sand every morning or on the beach, or when it's not.
So jealous of that soft sand. I remember that soft sand. It was amazing.
And I say to people, oh, I hate this soft sand. I've got a dicky knee, or I've got a bad knee. And I've been doing visualizations because I'm doing this walk on the Camino again next year, and just life generally, actually. I want to have a better knee. And I went, oh my God, I've got to stop saying I have a dicky knee, I have a bad knee. That's a stupid thing to say, that is working against me, believing, healing my knee and all of that manifesting stuff. So it's the little so many here often hear women say, I'm old, I'm too old to do that. Oh, I'm old, therefore I don't go out at night. I'm old, I don't walk. I'm old, I don't this, I don't that, blah, blah, blah. I'm broke. Oh, I can't go out for dinner, I'm broke. At the moment, because I've been on this disability pension, I don't have lots of money, but I'm moving into projects, where I will get paid for all of the beautiful things I have to offer. But for a while there, because I was getting a bit precious about what cash I had left or what money I had left, I'd go, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I can't afford it. And it's I never used to say that when I ran a huge, a big successful business. I never said I can't afford it. I did whatever the hell I wanted, and I am still that person. So it's the little sentences, it's the self-talk, like Marissa Peer talks about, we're not enough. We don't even realize we're saying we're not enough, but we do it constantly. So I think changing the self-talk, becoming aware of our narratives and doing the work on our narratives, it takes work to change your narratives. It just doesn't happen like that. I mean, you can have big changes like I have, but I still had to work on my narratives, in not going back to those old narratives. So sometimes with my son living over in Sweden, I feel really sad that I'm so far away from him. But that's a choice to feel like life's not good because my only family lives on the other side of the world. I talk to him all the time on video. I probably talk to my son more than many mothers talk to their children. It's all about, reframing, cognitive behavioral therapy. I find EFT. I had a panic attack recently, which I rarely have, but it was on finances. And I did an EFT session on anxiety and it completely went away. So there's actually lots of tools out there. EMD, that's the kind of eye thing. I've never done that. Hypnosis, visualization, meditation, all of these things are beautiful tools that we can incorporate into our life to ground us and keep us, to support ourselves mentally and physically and our relationships. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that did.
That's a long time ago.
It did. Monique, I have loved our conversation. I would love to pivot gears and shift into a little bit of rapid fire. Are you down?
Yep, okay. I am.
Who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie and why?
Okay, so when I first read Eat, Pray, Love, I thought she was a mental basket case. I thought, you are just pathetic, woman, right? Because I'm in a resilience mindset. Then I went through to the divorce and I went, oh my God, I understand. And her philosophy on life, she's not my hero, but that book, in just the philosophy of how she approaches life.
It's such a phenomenal book. Yeah.
Yeah.
What woman would you want to trade places with just for a day, like alive or when she was living at any point in history, see how she thought, experience the world as she did?
I'll tell you who I do like is Emma Thompson.
I love it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I could be in her world because she's an activist. She's very talented and she's so free and loves herself. So she's a great person. I could be her for a day.
What is your morning routine to set you up for a successful and healthy day?
So my morning routine is I first have a cup of coffee because I love my organic coffee. Then I go for a walk on the beach with my dog because my dog needs to go out and it's beautiful, really sets me up in awe. And then I do a morning treatment with the visualization. So I have a few practices. I won't go into what they are, but, that takes about an hour. So every day I go into that deep state that has been so beneficial to me in my life. And so usually I'm all set to go by like 9 o'clock to get on with all the different projects and different things that I want to do.
Amazing. What is your evening routine to set you up for a successful morning?
I often take a little bit of CBD.
You can totally say that. It's okay.
Okay. Because I sleep beautifully even without that. But I find just a couple of drops of the oil, I just find it really lovely and soothing and great for my body and my mind. But I don't do that every night. So, it's just whenever I feel like that. But I love going to bed. I lie in bed and go, oh, I love you. Because I love sleep. I love it. And I have really fantastic dreams. So, yeah, I don't particularly do anything. I don't have any mantras or anything like that.
What do you define to be your kingdom or your queendom?
Oh, travel. is where I thrive. I love it. I have to be careful with all people who love to travel, nomads. And I mean, I've been to over 67 countries. I've done pretty much every sort of travel you can imagine. I have not climbed a mountain. It's very easy when you love travel to think that everything good is out there. So that's something I need to be careful of with my adoration of travel. But that is my huge passion in life that gives me joy. So much joy. The nature, the meeting interesting people, the culture. I don't even need to do anything. Just sitting at a cafe watching people, listening to accents. I just love it. I don't know if that's the queendom, but I'm a travel queen.
Lastly, how do you crown yourself?
I think every day I love myself. No matter how I'm feeling, I acknowledge my feelings if I'm feeling triggered in some way. And I just always bring it back to love. I'm loved, lovable, and loving. That's it. That's the groundswell of my life. That's my crown, is love. Self-love.
Beautiful. Monique, how do we work with you? How do we join you on the Camino for your pilgrim walk?
I have a few places left. It's the 18th to the 29th of May. It's only 140 kilometers. It's a mindfulness pilgrim walk. So guess you're going to have my email address.
Mm-hmm. Will be on the description below. So your website and everything.
Yeah, my website's not current. So my LinkedIn really tells everybody about all the different projects that I offer. But everything's pretty much around narrative and how we can live an adventurous, exciting life and feel pretty good about ourselves. Yeah.
And transform our bodies.
Transform our bodies, transform everything. Yeah. I mean, have lived a very blessed life, even though I've had some challenges. Man, I've had a good life always. I'm happy about that. So I'm happy to be able to share that with some people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
It is such a pleasure to have you on. I was so honored to be on the Bafula podcast and to be able to share my story and yours. And so I'm so grateful that you got to come on here. And thank for just your honesty and your openness and your genuineness. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. And as always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.